Hello guys, what's up? I hope you're doing okay. In this video, we will see together how you can validate objects within an API using the framework Spring Boot and mainly and specifically using the convention JSR 303. Okay, but before going into the code and into this explanation, I want first to remind you about my platform, the aliboucoding platform, where you can find so many useful courses and where you can learn a lot within this platform. As a reminder, you know that I have courses in French and English, so just go ahead with the filter right here, filter the correct language or the best language that suits you better, and go ahead and use this platform and learn more. Also, you can get certified now with aliboucoding. Once you finish a course, you will receive or you will get a certification. Just go ahead and share it with your friends, share it on social media and tag me and I will reshare it back again. Get the certification and show it, share it with your friends, with your network, and show that you are learning from aliboucoding, and tag me as I mentioned and I will share it again, especially on LinkedIn. You can also publish it on Discord. I will create a special channel for that, for the certifications. Let me know, let me see that you are learning from aliboucoding. If you're new here, just take 1 second and hit the subscribe button so you can get all the new videos from us. Okay, so I want to see you part of this cool channel, and also I want to see you part of the nice platform aliboucoding, where you can learn a lot, and really a lot. Okay, so that's it. Only 1 second, just click the subscribe button and that's it. Let's go. When we work with APIs, we have process to post data. So means when a customer sends a request to our backend, we will send, for example, an HTTP post with a JSON object. For example, we want to create a new student within our API. Okay, so we will send the JSON data and it will be sent to the controller. Then the controller will forward this request to the service, and then the service, before persisting and calling the repository, what we will do a transformations, meaning that we will do a mapping from the data transfer object, which represented by this JSON object. We need to transform it to an entity. Okay, and then we can call, or we will call, the repository to save or persist the data within our database, because as you know, databases, they work only with entities, not data transfer objects. Okay, and as I explained before in many videos, it's always more secure and a best practice not to expose entities to the outside world. Okay, so this is our normal process, or the happy process that we have. So the user will send the JSON object, or they will send the data and the complete data, and in this case we have a first name, last name, email and birth date, and this data will be automatically persisted into the database. Now, what if the user sends some invalid data? Okay, so what will happen? So the user, for example, will send a request, an HTTP post request with a JSON representation, and here, instead of the correct value for the first name and last name, he will send null and invalid email like that, and also, for example, a birth date in the future, which is not okay, which is not logic. Okay, then what we will do, we will send it as always to the controller, service, transformation, repository, and then we will persist the data within the database. Okay, so what we will have a row or a line into our database that looks like this. We have an ID, but we have for first name null, last name equals null, email with an invalid email, and a birth date in the future. Okay, you may say that we can do this verification and do all this these checks within the database. For example, I ensure that I can't accept null values within the first name and the last name. Also, like I can do some verifications. The answer is yes, this is possible. This is also good and best practice to do it, but we need also to validate objects before persisting them to the database to have always clean data saved into our database. Okay, we mentioned many times the validation word, which is a keyword in this video, means that we need to validate the data. Means that we need to check that the data is conform to our logic within the application or not. If yes, so we can move on and persist the data and have clean data into our database. Otherwise, we need to stop the persistence process and then return a response back to the customer telling him, hey, this doesn't work, this is not good, you need to recheck the data and enter some correct data. Okay, let's see together the process now. As always, a customer will send a post request with a JSON data which is invalid. For this case, it will go to the controller and then to the service, and the service will do some transformation. Okay, so here I just put it or narrated the steps. So the first step, the service should call or should send this entity, sorry, not the entity, but we need to validate the object, the the DTO object. So the service will send this DTO to the validation process, to the validation mechanism. And once the validation mechanism, we will start the validation process. If the object is valid, so we go back to the service and the service will call the repository, and then later on we will save the data into the database and we will have correct data. Okay, else, like the unhappy case or the exceptional case is if the object is not valid, so we need to send a response back to the customer telling him or informing him that this object is not valid and it doesn't apply to our restrictions or our rules into the within the application. Okay, so this is what we will see in this video. We will see how we can implement this whole process, sending requests, going to the service, and then starting a validation process. And we will see the best practices and how we can make this validation process generic. Generic means that this validation process can apply to any object or to any DTO object or data transfer object. Okay, so we are not tightly coupled within any specific type. Okay, so now let's move on and start the implementation for this part. So before we start diving into the details of this video, let me first explain what I implemented for you. So all I did is I created a simple controller with this endpoint name or this request mapping. So it's /API/v1/greetings. And this controller will call a service which is a greeting service and has a single endpoint, a post mapping. And for this one, we need to pass a greeting object. So this object, we will see it just in a few moments. So inside this controller, all we will do is we will call this greeting the greeting service.save greeting, and this method will return a greeting message or will return a string, and the string or this string we will send it back to the user. So let's have a look first of all on the greeting. So the greeting, so we want to send a message from a person to another one. So like for example, our greeting message is like hello from Ali to everyone else. All right, so next let's check what this save greeting is doing. So it's a really simple method. So this save greeting, it will have, or it will take as a parameter a greeting object, and what we will do is we will just make small transformations on the object. So here we will concatenate a greeting message, and then we will get the message from we will add a from, and like the sender, we want to make it an uppercase. The same from the, well, not the sender, this one is the receiver or the target, and this one is the source of the greeting, like the person who sent the greeting, and both of them we want them to be in uppercase. So this is our application. Now what we will do next, we will just start our application and implement. We will start our application. We will not implement anything, but we will just test it as it is and see what will be the output of this small endpoint. Our application is up and running. Next step, we'll just open Postman and prepare this request. So the URL is /API/v1/greetings, like just we have in here, and our application is running on the port 8080, and we will send a post request. And here for the body, I want to test, or the first case, let's test it with an empty body, or okay, let's give it a happy path. Let's do the happy path. Here I have a message from N2. So here I have an object called MSG hello community, and here from, so we have the from here aliboucoding, and then to the greatest community ever. So this is what I want to send. Let's send this and see the output. And here this is what our endpoint or our backend is doing, is just returning greeting message hello community from aliboucoding to the greatest community ever. And what we are implementing, or what we are doing in the backend, is just transforming this from and to objects into uppercase. Now this is so funny, right? I hope so. I hope this is really interesting. Okay, this is a nice application that we are doing. Okay, let's go ahead, deploy it and do some marketing and earn some money. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just kidding. All right, next I want to check if, for example, I forget to pass from. Like my object will contain only message and to. Now I'm gonna send, oops, I have a 500 and it's an internal server error. And this one, I will go back to my application and I will check the output. And here we see that we cannot invoke string.toUppercase because the get from is null. So what we need to do? All right, stay with me. I'm gonna give you the solution for this. What we need to do is, to fix this issue, is we need to validate these objects, the values. Like I need to make sure that I have this message, and I have the from, and I have the to, and then I can apply uppercase on them. And for example, in case I don't have, I can just return whether an error message or throw an exception or something like that. So this is the manual thing. Let's just not go ahead and do all this stuff. Let me directly go to the point. Actually, Spring provides us with a really nice starter, which is the Spring Boot starter validation. And this starter has a main role and a main functionality, which is super nice, which is validating objects using just annotations. So all we need to do is just give some annotations, and then it will automatically validate our objects. Let's go ahead and do this. First of all, let's add some dependency. And here, open the pom.xml file, go whatever you want, for example, after the springboot start to web, and here just add a dependency, and the dependency name or the artifact ID is the springboot starter validation, and I have it here, and the group ID is always org spring framework.boot. all right, here don't forget to click on this icon to reload the project. Now our dependency is ready to use, and it's already now in the class path. Let's move on and use this dependency. Let's enjoy validating our objects. Next step is, let's go to this greeting object and add some annotations. So for the annotations, we have a bunch of them. We will explore it later on, but now I will just show you the main annotations that we will use in this video. So for example, if I want this object or this field not to be null, so I have a not null annotation, and make sure that this annotation comes from the javax.validation.constraints. Okay, I also, for example, I want it to be not empty. So not empty here will make sure that this object or this guy is not empty. Let me just copy pasting this in here, and now I will just restart the application and see what will happen. Let's see if our object, or we will get some validation messages or errors, or and so on and so forth, or whatever. I'm gonna send it again. I still have the same exception in the backend, and if I check the output, so I still have a null. Why? The answer is easy, because we need to tell Spring, or to tell our application, that I want to validate this object. So here, like, this is the first way, or the first implementation that we will see, and we will see an advanced way to validate objects. So here I need to add a valid annotation, which comes from javax.validation. All right, now I will restart the app and see the output. Here I'm expecting to see the validations or the errors that we have. Okay, send. Okay, now we no longer have this 500, so now it's a bad request, and a bad request means that the input that we are passing is not enough, or there is something which is not correct. Okay, let's check in the console, and here what we have here resolve this one method argument not valid exception and validation field blah blah blah, and here we can also see that the field error in object greeting, this object, this one here on the field from this field from, because we have this validation annotations, rejected value null. So here we see that we have a validation but, and also we can see that we have a default message here, must not be null. But in this case, I want to see, I want to get a response. I want to see the response in here. Like, this 400 is not sufficient for me. I want to see the 400, and also I want to see the error messages. I'm gonna show you how to do this. Let's go back to the controller. And here we can add also an object of type binding result. I'm gonna call it binding result. So you don't need to provide this one from the front end or from the API call, because Spring is gonna inject this one. And we can do if binding result dot has error, because this one will be injected when we do, or when we make the validation step. When Spring or the Spring Boot validation starter will do the validation for this object, he will also inject this binding result, and we will be able to check and see if we have errors or not. So in this case, what I want to do, I want just to send back this response to the front end. So what I will do, I will just copy paste this one here. instead of accepted, I will say bad request, and here I can provide the body, and the body, like, it will be from the binding result dot get all errors, and here I need to do something. I need to do some implementation in order to get the errors. So get all errors, and here I will start a stream, and I will just do a mapping, and the mapping, and as you can see here in the auto completion, it's a stream of object error, and here all I need to do is object error dot get object name. So here the object name, it will just return this greeting. So let me write it correctly, and object error dot get default message, so I can get the default message from here. And now, because here I'm just returning a string, I need to do join. I need to join it. So it's collector.joining, so it will join all these error messages. Let's restart the application and see what will be the output of this one. Okay, the application is started, and now I have this must not be null and must not be empty. Okay, this is good thing. It's not correctly formatted, but this is good. Now, for example, I will also remove this message, and let's see the output. So we have must not be null, must not be empty, must not be null, must not be empty. Okay, and this is not enough. Actually, this is not good. This is not good. I don't like this output. I will show you how we can improve this. And also, I really don't like writing logic code in the controller, so I really don't like that. I'm gonna show you a good way on how to implement validations in your application, in your REST API application. Just stay with me, and we will start doing this. First of all, let's clean up this code. I no longer need this. Also, I don't need to tell or to ask for validation in here. Optimize the imports, and for this greeting, let's just keep it like that. And now let's move on and implement our validation. So first of all, let's go ahead and create a service. I will create a new class, and I will call it objects validator, for example. So this class, first of all, it should be a Spring Bean, or a component or Spring component. So we can use whether the service annotation or component annotation, but I would go for component annotation. So this will allow Spring to automatically inject this class. So what this object validator will do, it will take a class as a parameter, and it will try to validate it. And to do so, we need to declare a bench, or like two variables. First of all, I will declare a variable of type validator factory, and this I will call it factory equals validation, and always make sure that it's the correct package. Always make sure to be the correct one. So it's javax.validation. Sorry, it's this one dot. So this is the first one. This is our factory. I will explain everything in details. Second, I will declare a private final, also an object. I will call it validator. Sorry, it's of type validator, and always from the same package, and I will call it validator. And this time I will use my factory to get the validator. So these two lines, the first one aims for building the default validator factory. So it's the design pattern factory, and if you want to have a look, you can also check the design pattern playlist. Also, you can check it on my website. Next, we have this validator, which is we will make a call or we will request the factory to return the validator. And now all we need to do is to create a method that will validate our object. So let's create a public, for now let's say it's a void, and then we will see what we need to do with it. So void, let's call it validate, and this validate method, just as a reminder, what we want to validate this greeting object. Okay, so I will pass a greeting object. I will call it object to validate to make it generic. And now what I need to do first is as simple as that, is this validator, this guy from right here, dot, we have a validate method. And this validate method, it will take an object as a parameter. So if I call validation.validate, it will do all the validations and it will return, it will return an object or a set of constraint violation of type T, and this type T is something like is generic. So for now it will return a set of constraint violations for my object greeting. So I will create a variable, call it violation, and here I will use the shortcut to show the actions. And here I will just tell IntelliJ to create a local variable, and here we see that we see the type, which is a set of constraint violation of type greeting. So now I just hit enter, so I have my set, and this set will contain all the validation messages, like all the constraint violation objects. And this one, it contains the get message template, root bean, and so on and so forth. So you can have a look on this constraint violation interface. All right, now what to do with these violations? First of all, let's check if, so in here we can whether directly return these violations. But just returning this violation doesn't make sense, because we can also inject these two variables in the place, or like in the service where we want to validate our object. So we need to do something else, like we need to handle a bit more what we want to do with that. So what I propose is, let's check if our violations is empty. If it's not empty, because I have the negation here, so if I have violations, so if I have objects not valid, or like objects which are not valid like that, using the annotations, what I want to do, I want to do something like that. So I will first open a stream. Let me write it like that for you. So dot stream, and I will do a mapping. Why I want to do a mapping? First of all, let me explain. Let me write the code first. So here we see that we have this constraint violation dot get message. I will just hit enter to select that, and then I will do collector dot to list or to set or whatever you like, but I will use a set, and I will explain why. Okay. So now what I did, I streamed over the violations, and then I did the mapping, because all I need is this get message, and then I want to collect it to a set or to a string or whatever you want. Let's now go ahead and try to use this, or try to improve a bit this one. So here we said that we have a void, or our method is a void. So what we can do, we can whether return or transform it to a list of string that will collect all the error messages, and here we will join it to a string, or we can return the list itself. We can return the list itself, and then in the service, if we have a list of violations or not, and so on and so forth. So, but there is a better way that we will see in the next video. So just stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe and enable the notifications so you get notified when the next video will be released. All right, so now let's go ahead and use this service. So first I will do something like that. And here I will say collections.empty set. I will use an empty set as a default return, and here it will be like I will just change the return type of my class. So it's gonna be a set of string here. So a set of string because this one will return a stream of string, and yeah. Okay, so let's move on to our service. But first let's just move this object validator to the correct package. Here I will create a package, I will call it validators, and then I will ask IntelliJ to move it to this new package, and just hit OK. And now as you can see, we have this validators package, and our objects validator is inside. You can call it class validators or objects validator as you like, guys. Okay, so next let's go back to our service. And here, before doing all this, what we need to do is I will create an instance, or I will inject my objects validator. I will call it validator. And here I will use the required args constructor from Lombok to create a constructor with this variable, or with this, or with all the final fields in the class. So the first thing to do is I will call my validator.validate, and I will pass my greeting object. So here I will use the keyword var violations equals this, and here I will just make a small test if violations dot is not empty. Let's return something here. Let's return something. So like that, we are able to use and to handle our violations. But the main goal of this, or like of what we want to do, is to return our error messages to our client, or to our user, to our REST client. So we can do something like that. Dot. I guess there is a method called. Okay, I can do stream dot collect. I can do joining, and I guess for joining I can also provide. There is a joining method where it takes a delimiter. Okay. Okay, so let's say it like that. It's just for testing, because as I mentioned, we will improve a lot this one. Okay, so yeah, okay, we can do string.join, and this is better. Okay, so now let's move on and test our changes and see what will be the impact, or what will be the output of these changes. Okay, so I started the application for you. Now what we will do is we will test these changes. So let's go to our Postman, and just a small reminder, here we have only this two property, which is this one, but here we know that message and the from and so on and so forth is mandatory. Okay, so I will just go ahead and click on send, And here we see that we have two messages, must not be empty, must not be empty. And this is much more meaningful than having or like implementing all that thing we had in our controller. So now I will just make some improvements on our service. So here for this delimiter, let's use a line break like that. So this is the first thing. The second thing is in this greeting, let's use some messages. Let's use here the message, not message, the message should not be empty. And I will use the same for the not null, not empty here, and same for this, and I will just change this one. So here the, let's say from, just keep it like that, just a test, and here to should not be empty. I will restart the application and see what will happen. Like let's see the changes. So I should click on send and see the changes now. Now we see that we have more meaningful messages, and this one also we can make it uppercase, and this one too. So like that we have more meaningful messages, and even the implementation is good. But still one thing or one question we should ask. So here our validate method in this object's validator class accepts only an object of type greeting. So what happened, or like what should we do if we have another type or a different object to validate? This is what we will see next. This is how we will implement a generic solution for this validator. Let's make this class generic. What means generic? Generic means that it can accept any type of object or any class. We can also improve on this part, and we can tell that we want to accept a specific class or specific type. So first of all, to make this class and generic, but let's first answer the question why we need this generic class. So here we have a greeting DTO. I will create another one. I'm just gonna call it example DTO, which is a class, and I will have A, B, C, for example. Okay, and I also, let's say I have these validations. I want also to validate these inputs. We don't care about the messages we have here. We can even remove them, so to avoid the confusion. So here let me add a getter and a setter to make it convenient for you. So here I want to use this class validator to validate also this example DTO object, but this validate method accepts only a greeting. So let's go ahead and show you in the service. I will create a method public string test, and this one, it will take an example DTO as an input or as a parameter. And here I want to do var, for example, violations equals my validator dot validate, and now I want to pass this DTO. But we can see here that it's not possible because the required type is greeting, and we are providing an example DTO. So it proposed to change the parameter and so on and so forth. But okay, one of the solutions is to duplicate this object validator and like rename this one. We call it greeting validator. We create another one with the same code, and we call it example DTO validator, and so on and so forth. So as many validators as we have, like we will have as as many DTOs, as many, okay, I'm sorry, I just forgot the how to say that. So what I mean, like, we have 5 DTOs, so we need 5 validators, which is not good, We can use the power of Java and the power of object-oriented programming. And this way is to make this objects validator generic, means accepts any type or accepts any class. So now I will just do this. This means that my class now is generic. It accepts any type. Okay. And now instead of this greeting object, I will just change it to this type, and here it will be also this type. So everywhere where I have greeting, I just change it or switch it to this T. And now we see, if we go back to our service, so we see that we no longer have the error here, but here I'm just gonna return a string or an empty string. But here it says that the validator, it's unchecked for the type T, because why? We have here the object validator is a generic type, and this generic type, normally we use it only within one service, like we validate or we have an object per service. So here it will be of type greeting. So it's this validator is of type greeting, and let me call it greeting validator, greeting objects validator, or just greeting validator, whatever. So this one is greeting validator. I can create another one just for the purpose of this test, and it will be of type example DTO, and it will be example object validator, and I can call it just example DTO validator. And here I can use this example DTO validator to validate my DTO object, or I can just use it without this type, but it's always recommended to use a type. But here, just for the sake of this example, we have 2 objects, or we have 2 types, 2 different objects in the same service. But normally you should not have the case, but if you have it, you also have the way how to do this. So now I guess that's it about this object validation. The only thing that I don't like about what we did is this part, or like assigning this validation or violations to a variable, and then check if it's valid or not, or like if it's empty or not. If it's the case, we just joining a string, and so on and so forth. This is not really good. We can do better than that, and this will be the purpose or the goal of the next video that we will see next week. And in that video, we will see how we can handle all these violations in a really smart way. And it's something which is really, really recommended, and it's used in all, or like, let's say almost all the production projects, and used within really big companies. So anyway, and before we leave, if you new to my channel, just go ahead and subscribe. Also, don't forget to follow me on the different places and social media and so on and so forth. Also, stay tuned for the next video, which is really, really important, and I really, really recommend it. So thanks a lot, guys, and see you next time.